The rain tapped softly against the window of Amara's small, dimly lit room. The faint glow of her bedside lamp cast long shadows on the walls, making the space feel smaller, more suffocating. She sat on the edge of her bed, her hands trembling as she clutched her phone. The screen displayed a series of messages between her and Emeka, the boy she had fallen for. His words, once sweet and comforting, now felt like shards of glass piercing her heart. It had started innocently enough. They met at a friend's party, and there was an instant connection. Emeka was charming, with a smile that made her stomach flutter. They spent hours talking, laughing, and sharing dreams. But as the weeks went by, something felt off. There was a familiarity about him that she couldn't place, a nagging feeling in the back of her mind that something wasn't right. Tonight, it all came crashing down. Amara had been scrolling through old family photos, trying to distract herself from the unease that had been growing inside her. Her eyes landed on a picture of her as a child, standing next to her older brother, Chike. He had been kidnapped when she was just 5 years old, and the family had never recovered him. The pain of his loss had haunted her parents for years, and though they rarely spoke of it, his absence was a constant shadow in their lives. As she stared at the photo, something clicked. Emeka's smile, the way he tilted his head when he laughed, the faint scar above his eyebrow, it was all too familiar. Her breath hitched, and her heart began to race. She grabbed her phone and typed out a message to him, her fingers shaking.
Emeka, do you have any siblings?
The response came quickly.
No, I'm an only child. Why?
Her stomach churned. She wanted to believe it was a coincidence, but the pieces were falling into place too perfectly. She felt a cold sweat break out on her skin as she typed again.
Do you remember anything about your childhood? Before you were adopted?
There was a long pause before he replied.
Not much. Why are you asking me this, Amara?
She couldn't bring herself to respond. Her mind was spinning, and a wave of nausea washed over her. She dropped her phone and buried her face in her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. How could this be happening? How could she have fallen for her own brother? The thought made her feel sick, ashamed, and terrified all at once. The room felt like it was closing in on her. The shadows on the walls seemed to shift and twist, as if they were alive, mocking her. She wanted to scream, to run, to do anything to escape the nightmare she found herself in. But she was frozen, trapped in her own guilt and fear. Just then, the door creaked open. Amara's head snapped up, and she saw Emeka standing in the doorway, his expression a mix of confusion and concern.
Amara, what's wrong?
He asked softly, stepping into the room. She couldn't speak. She just shook her head, tears still streaming down her face. Emeka sat down beside her on the bed and gently pulled her into a hug.
Talk to me, Amara. What's troubling you?
Amara hesitated, then whispered.
Emeka, I think I've done something terrible.
He pulled back slightly, looking into her eyes.
What do you mean?
She took a deep, shuddering breath.
I think you're my brother. I think you're Chike.
For a moment, he just stared at her, his face blank with shock. Then he shook his head, a nervous laugh escaping his lips.
That's impossible. I'm not your brother, Amara. I'm Emeka. I was adopted, yes, but this is crazy.
She reached for the old family photo she had left on the bedside table and handed it to him.
Look at this, Emeka. Look at him. Look at you.
He took the photo, his hands trembling slightly as he studied it. His eyes widened, and his breath caught in his throat.
This can't be real. It's just a coincidence.
It's not, Emeka, the scar above your eyebrow, the way you smile. It's him, it's you.
She said softly. He dropped the photo onto the bed and stood, pacing the room.
No, this isn't happening. This can't be happening.
Amara stood as well, her heart breaking at the pain in his voice.
I'm so sorry, Emeka. I didn't know, I didn't realize until tonight. If I had known.
He stopped pacing and turned to face her, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and despair.
If you had known what? You wouldn't have fallen for me. Wouldn't have let me fall for you.
She flinched at his words, tears streaming down her face.
I don't know what I would have done. But I know this isn't your fault and it's not mine either, we didn't know.
She sat beside him, her hand hovering over his back before she pulled it away, unsure if she had the right to comfort him.
I know it's a lot. But you have a family, Emeka. A family that's been waiting for you. My parents, they never stopped loving you. Never stopped hoping you'd come home.
He looked up at her, his eyes red with unshed tears.
And what about us? What happens to us now?
She swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper.
I don't know. But whatever happens, we'll figure it out together. You're my brother Emeka and I just want you to be happy.
He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly.
I need time. Time to think, to process all of this.
I understand. Take all the time you need.
She said softly. He stood, his movements slow and deliberate, and walked to the door. Before he left, he turned back to her, his expression unreadable.
Thank you for telling me, Amora. I need to figure out who I am.
As the door closed behind him, Amara felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. She sank back onto the bed, her mind racing with questions and fears. But amidst the chaos, there was a small, fragile hope. Her brother was alive. He was home. And no matter how complicated things were, she knew they would find a way to move forward. The shadows in the room seemed to recede once more, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Amara allowed herself to breathe. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but she wasn't alone. And that, she realized, was enough.
Life's most unexpected twists can lead to profound growth and renewal. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on the relationships in your life. Reach out, reconnect, and embrace the possibility of healing. Sometimes, the shadows we fear hold the key to our brightest beginnings. Subscribe and turn on post notifications to stay updated with more heartfelt stories and inspiring journeys. Share your thoughts or your own story of connection in the comments below. Let's inspire each other to face life's challenges with courage and hope.